If English still scares you after years of study, the problem is not your ability. It is the way you were taught. And once you see why, your learning will never be the same. What if I told you that the real reason you can't speak English is not because you are bad at languages, not because you are slow, not because you didn't study enough, but because you were taught English in a way that kills it before it can live? Think about this. You may have studied English for years. You may know many words. You may understand grammar. But when a real person stands in front of you and speaks, your mind goes empty. Your heart starts to beat. Your mouth goes silent. In that moment, English disappears, and a painful question is born inside you. Why can I learn English, but not use English? This lesson is not here to make you memorize anything. It is here to wake something up. Because English was never meant to stay in your notebook. English was meant to move through your life, to travel with you, to sit with you in cafes, to walk with you in airports, to open doors to people you have never met, to give you a voice in a world bigger than your own. Welcome to Glaze English. And if you have ever felt that English is close, but never truly yours, stay with me. Because this is not a grammar lesson. This is not a school lesson. This is the beginning of a transformation. A story of how English stops being something you chase and becomes something that walks with you. But before we go any further, I want to ask you for one small thing. If you are serious about changing your English, support this journey. Subscribe to this channel. Not just for us, but for yourself. So every time a new lesson appears, it pulls you back into English. It reminds you. It trains you. It keeps the door open. Now take a breath, because what you're about to hear is not how people study English. It is how people begin to live in it. And by the end of this journey, the most important thing will not be what you learn. It will be who you become. And this transformation does not begin with motivation. It begins with a quiet decision. My name is Alex. I am not gifted with languages. I was never the good English student. For a long time, English in my life was something distant and heavy. It lived in classrooms. It lived in tests. It lived in red marks and forgotten notebooks. I could recognize words. I could sometimes understand slow videos. But English did not belong to me. When real people spoke, something broke. Their voices moved too fast. The sounds blended together. And inside my head, English collapsed into noise. I smiled. I nodded. But I felt small. I felt locked out of conversations. Locked out of chances. Locked out of a world I wanted to enter. One evening, after another moment of pretending to understand, I sat alone and asked myself a question that felt uncomfortable. What if I am not failing English? What if English is failing me? What if the problem was not effort, but direction? A few weeks later, I walked into a small English center near my apartment. I didn't go there to become fluent. I went there because I was tired of being silent. On the first day, The teacher did not start with rules. She did not ask us to open a book. She asked us to speak. Our names, where we were from, why we were there. Our sentences were broken. Our pronunciation was weak. But something was alive in that room. People were using English, not studying it. And then she said something that quietly rewired the way I saw language. English is not a subject, she said. It is a tool. And tools are not memorized. They are touched. They are used. They become part of your hands. She told us that if we wanted English to change, our relationship with it had to change. We could not keep English inside a schedule. We had to invite it into our days. She asked us a simple question. Where is English in your life right now? Not in your goals, not in your plans, in your real day. On your phone, in your music, on the internet, in the places you go, in the work you want to do. English was already around us, but we were treating it like a stranger. That day, I stopped thinking of English as something I needed to finish. I started seeing it as a place I needed to enter. I noticed English on signs I had walked past for years. I heard it in cafes, at bus stops, in small fragments of conversation. I watched short videos at night, not to study, but to listen. And for the first time, I did not feel like I was preparing for English. I felt like I was meeting it. Our teacher said something else that stayed with me. You don't build strength by visiting the gym sometimes. You build it by touching weight often. Language is the same. English must touch your life every day. Not for hours, not perfectly, but daily. From that week, I created a new rule for myself. English would enter my life every day, even if only for a few minutes. Not as homework, as presence. Sometimes it was a short story before bed. Sometimes it was a slow video in the morning. Sometimes it was one sentence whispered to myself on the way to work. Nothing heroic, nothing heavy, but something real. And something unexpected happened. The pressure disappeared. I was no longer chasing fluency. I was building contact. I was not trying to become good. I was learning how to stay connected. And in that space, where effort became lighter and curiosity became stronger, English stopped feeling like a wall. It began to feel like a door that didn't open with force, a door that opened with touch. And once that door was open, I didn't need motivation anymore. I had direction. Because I finally understood this. English does not grow when you study harder. It grows when you change how it lives in your day. And that understanding became the foundation for everything that followed. And once that door was open, I didn't look for motivation anymore. I looked for a way to build something real inside that open space. What I needed was not more advice. I needed a system that could live inside a normal life, not a perfect life, not a student's life, a real one. The first thing that changed everything was how I met words. Before, words were objects, isolated, cold, something to collect and forget. But when English entered my days, words stopped being something I hunted. They became something I noticed. I started reading. not textbooks, not news full of difficult language. I read simple stories, stories that were easy enough to understand, but interesting enough to continue. At first, I was surprised by how much I could already follow. The story moved. The meaning was clear, and inside that meaning, new words appeared like small lights. When I met a new word, I didn't stop to capture it. I didn't break the story. I looked it up quickly, felt its meaning, and walked forward. And something powerful happened. The same words came back, on the next page, in another story, on a sign, in a video. They returned wearing different clothes. And every time they returned, they felt more familiar. I was not forcing my brain to remember. I was giving it reasons to recognize. One night, I realized I could read for 10 minutes without translating. I was following events, emotions, choices. I wasn't building language. I was entering it. That was when I understood something simple and true. Words grow when they are part of movement, when they belong to something that continues. Reading didn't just give me vocabulary. It gave me a place where English could breathe. But understanding words was not the same as speaking them. I could recognize language, but my mouth still felt like a stranger to it. So the second change began in a very physical way. I stopped treating pronunciation as knowledge and started treating it as training. I began to work with sound. Every day, for a few minutes, I listened to slow, clear English. And I spoke with it, not after it, with it. I didn't try to be perfect. I tried to be close. Close to the rhythm, close to the timing, close to the feeling. At first, my voice felt wrong. My mouth was slow. My tongue resisted. But something deeper was happening. My muscles were waking up. My ears were connecting to movement. English was no longer an idea. It was becoming an action. I noticed that when I repeated with the voice, my mind became quiet. I was not thinking of sounds, I was following them. And when you follow sound, your body learns faster than your memory ever could. After some time, people stopped leaning forward when I spoke. They stopped asking me to repeat. They started answering. And that was a shock, because for the first time, my English did not return to me as confusion. It returned as response. And in that response, confidence grew without effort. Not because I felt good, because something worked. Then there was grammar, the old weight, the silent enemy. Grammar had always been the reason I paused. The reason I built sentences in my head until the moment was gone. The reason my English stayed inside instead of coming out. But now, something had changed. Because grammar was already entering me, not as rules, as shapes. I saw the same sentence patterns again and again in stories. I heard them again and again in voices. And slowly, my mouth began using them before my mind named them. I remember a moment that surprised me. Someone asked me a question about yesterday, and my mouth answered in the past. I didn't think. I didn't choose a tense. I didn't correct myself. The sentence arrived whole. And in that moment, I understood something that years of studying had hidden from me. Grammar is not information. It is experience. It is what happens when patterns repeat inside you long enough to feel normal. When grammar lives in rules, it is heavy. When it lives in stories and conversations, it is invisible. And invisible grammar is powerful. Because it does not block speech, it carries it. The last piece of the system was listening. Real listening. Not the kind where sound plays while your thoughts run somewhere else. The kind where the ear learns. I changed only 2 things: what I listened to and how many times I stayed. I chose English that did not fight me, slow enough to follow, clear enough to enjoy, human enough to care about. And I didn't leave after 1 time. I listened again. At first, I thought repetition was boring, but something unexpected happened. The second time was not the same as the first. New words appeared. New connections formed. Sounds separated. It was like watching a city at night from far away. At first, only light. Then, streets. Then, people. My ears were learning to see. One afternoon, while standing somewhere ordinary, someone spoke to me. A normal sentence, in a normal voice, and I understood it completely. Not because it was slow, because I was ready. That moment stayed with me for a long time. Not because I was proud, but because I felt present. I was inside English, not chasing it. And when that happened, something inside me relaxed. English stopped being a performance. It became a place. A place I could enter without preparing. A place I could stay without translating. A place I could move in without fear. Reading gave English a home. Sound gave it a body. Patterns gave it structure. Listening gave it life. And together, these small daily actions built something that years of effort never had. They built familiarity. And familiarity is what fluency is made of. One night, after another simple day of touching English, I sat quietly and realized something important. I was no longer asking, how do I learn English? I was asking, where is English in my day? Because it was there. In my thoughts, in my ears, in my mouth, in my choices. For the first time, English was not something I studied in pieces. It was something I lived in moments. And that was the beginning of something much bigger than skill. It was the beginning of change. And when English became a place I could enter, something inside me began to move in ways I did not expect. At first, I thought I was changing my English. But slowly, I realized I was changing myself. Because skill is only one layer. Under it lives identity. The real shift did not happen the day I understood a full sentence. It happened the day I stopped hiding. I began to speak before I felt ready. Not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. I spoke when the sentence was simple. I spoke when the grammar was unsure. I spoke when my voice was still searching, and every time I spoke, something quiet grew stronger. My right to be in the conversation. I started speaking to myself when no one was there, not to practice English, but to stay inside it. I described what I was doing. I named what I was feeling. I shaped small thoughts into simple sentences, and the mirror stopped being strange. It became familiar. Not because my English was good, but because my voice was no longer afraid. One day, someone new joined a group I was in. He was quiet. His eyes moved more than his mouth. I recognized that look. I sat next to him and spoke first, not to teach him, to open space. I asked his name. I asked where he was from. I asked why he was learning English. He answered slowly, and then more, and then he smiled. In that moment, I understood something important. Confidence does not come from speaking well. It comes from being willing to be seen while you are still becoming. Later that week, something happened that felt small but changed everything. I woke up from a dream, and inside that dream, I had been speaking English. Not studying it, not translating it, living in it. The words had come without permission. The sentences had moved without construction. When I realized this, I lay still for a long time. Because my mind had crossed a line, it had stopped visiting English. It had started using it. From that day, I began to care not only about what I did with English, but about how I thought with it. I gently turned my inner voice toward it. When I walked, I named what I saw. When I planned in English. When I questioned in English. Not to force change, to invite it. At first, the thoughts were slow, simple, sometimes wrong, but they were mine. And slowly, something beautiful happened. English began to appear before my native language. Not always, but often. In moments of time, in choices, in emotion. The language was moving closer to the center. And when a language moves to the center, it stops being something you hold. It becomes something that holds you. I noticed that speaking felt lighter, listening felt faster, silence felt smaller. Because I was no longer translating the world, I was participating in it. That is when I understood what real fluency is. It is not speed. It is not vocabulary. It is not accent. It is belonging. Belonging to the flow of thought. Belonging to the rhythm of sound. Belonging to the moment without preparation. And in that belonging, a new version of me was quietly forming. Not someone who learns English, someone who lives in it. And once that identity begins to form, it does not fade. It waits for what comes next. And when that new version of you begins to form, the journey does not end. It finally becomes real. Today, English is no longer something outside my life. It lives inside my ordinary moments, in the quiet, in the work, in the small conversations that once scared me. I still make mistakes. I still meet words I do not know. But those moments no longer feel like failure. They feel like motion. And motion is alive. I no longer ask myself, am I good enough yet? I ask, where did English touch my day? In a page I read, in a voice I heard, in a sentence I spoke, in a thought I shaped. This is how the language continues to grow, not through pressure, through presence. If there is one thing I want to leave with you, it is this. Do not wait for a future version of yourself to begin living in English. Begin with the version you are now. Read one page. Listen to one short story. Speak one simple sentence. Think one small thought in English. And then do it again tomorrow. You do not need long hours. You do not need perfect methods. You need continuity. Because fluency is not built by intensity. It is built by return. Return to the language. Return to the sound. Return to the habit. Let English become a place you visit so often that one day, without noticing, you realize you never really left. And when that day comes, you will not say, I finished learning English. You will say, English is part of who I am. If this journey speaks to you, stay connected. Support this channel. Walk this path with us. More stories will come, more guidance, more simple English to live inside. And remember, every time you return to English, you are not just building a skill, you are shaping a new way to move through the world. And that is a journey worth continuing. As this journey comes together, one truth becomes clear. Learning English was never really about English. It was about how we approach growth. Most people believe change comes from intensity, from big plans, from powerful motivation, from dramatic new beginnings. But real transformation rarely arrives that way. It arrives quietly. It enters through small decisions that feel almost too simple to matter. Reading one page. Listening to one short story. Speaking one imperfect sentence. Thinking one small thought in a new language. These actions do not look powerful, but they are, because they are repeatable. And whatever you repeat shapes you. English did not grow because of one great effort. It grew because it was invited back again and again into ordinary days. And in that repetition, something deeper than language was trained. Patience, consistency, courage, presence. The courage to begin before confidence. The patience to stay when progress is slow. The consistency to return even when motivation fades. The presence to live inside the process instead of waiting for the result. This is not only how languages are learned. This is how lives are built. Skills, health, confidence, careers, relationships. They do not change when we try harder. They change when we show up differently. When we stop asking for fast results and start building quiet systems. When we stop chasing future versions of ourselves and start respecting the person who is practicing today. The deep lesson in this journey is simple but demanding. You do not rise to the life you want. You sink to the habits you keep. And habits are not created by force. They are created by environment and return. So, how do you apply this now? Choose one small daily point of contact with what you want to become. Not 10, 1. If you want English, touch English daily. If you want confidence, practice expression daily. If you want growth, enter discomfort daily. If you want clarity, create silence daily. Then protect that point of contact. Make it easy. Make it visible. Make it part of who you are. And when you miss a day, do not judge. Return. Because return is the real discipline. And one day, without ceremony, without announcement, you will notice something has shifted. Not only in your skill, but in your identity. You will not say, I am trying. You will say, this is what I do. And that is where change becomes permanent. Now, I would love to hear from you. What is one small daily habit you want to build right now? Please write your answer in the comments so everyone can read, share, and learn from each other. And if this message helped you, support the journey. Subscribe to Glaze English so we can keep creating deeper, more meaningful content for you. Thank you for being here.